Welcome back to the Broadway Block. On today's episode, we're going to go over our back-to-back games, and we got a special guest on, John Chick. How are you today?
Joe, I'm doing awesome here, and just can't thank you guys enough for having me on the show. And we were talking a little bit off air before we hit record here, and I mean, what a relief going into Dallas and getting a win, going into Arizona and getting a win. I mean, if the Rangers had stumbled again, we could be recording this episode on a 6-game losing streak, and that wouldn't be a lot of fun for either of us. And I mean, just what a relief getting these 2 wins over the weekend here.
Huge wins, huge wins. Steve, what did you think of the wins this weekend?
What an atmosphere that Coyotes arena was. The Stars game felt a little lackluster at first, and the Rangers sort of slowly took over. I liked Trocheck. I feel like stood out to me. The top two lines really kind of forcing their way to victory there. We looked a little lackluster in the Coyotes game, but maybe you could blame the back-to-back. There was some talk about the quality of the ice conditions. Obviously, the locker room situation's been pretty well noted, but I think that the team handled themselves in stride. And I mean, also, what's not to like about going to overtime and going into a shootout with the, cup champions. I think that over the weekend, we showed that we can rebound. And I think that there was some things to walk away from the Islanders and Avalanche's games as well.
Well, I really liked how Igor played back-to-back. Obviously, we've seen Halak struggle a little bit. I don't know per se if it's been Halak's fault so much. It seems like we play as a different team when Halak is back there, kind of what the Rangers do, where we play up to better teams and down to worse teams. I'm not too sure yet. The jury's not out on Halak yet. If he's the guy for the backup, I am happy that Chris Drury brought in Domingue. How many more games do we got to watch Halak lose before maybe we see Domingue out there? John, what did you think of Halak's play in those 2 games?
I mean, the way I see it, he's played 3 games to start the season so far, I thought he was excellent against the Winnipeg Jets, kind of a hard luck loser in that game. He really struggled in his second game. I believe that was the one. Was that the one against the Blue Jackets? I think off the top of my head, that was the one. Really struggled in that game. And against the Islanders, kind of a so-so performance, a little bit up and down. For the most part, I'm okay with Yaroslav Halak as the backup. I did like kind of an off-season series where I was looking at potential free agent signings for the Rangers. And of course, we all knew Georgiev was going to get traded. They were going to need a new backup goalie. And I had Halak, pretty much at the top of the list as far as, realistic options. Obviously, they're not going to spend big on a backup goalie. But, Halak's been around the league. He's bounced around. He's been in the role of starter. He's been on some teams where he's been in a timeshare. He's been the backup on certain teams. And, I thought he would do a decent job. And I'm not ready to panic yet as it pertains to Yaroslav Halak because it's been a little bit of a mixed bag. But to both of your points, I was very happy to see the Rangers go with Igor Shesterkin and kind of buck that trend. They usually don't play him in both games of a back-to-back. But this is crunch time for the Rangers. I mean, they entered this weekend on a 4-game losing streak. They had to win both of these games. I mean, it's a little bit maybe over dramatic to call them both must wins, but you beat Dallas. To really make that count, you got to beat the Coyotes, and the best way to do that is to put Igor Shesterkin out there. And they made it interesting. Neither one of these games were perfect, but the big thing, they found a way to get 4 points over the weekend. So good stuff there. But, Halak, mixed bag so far, but I was happy to see them go with Igor in both of these last 2 games here.
I think to your point, man, scoring was a big problem in some of the Yaroslav Halak games. I would say that there was plenty of opportunity to make those games more of a winnable opportunity for him out there, especially you mentioned the Blue Jackets, some unsteadiness, and I think that it was a winnable game for at least a period and a half, 2 periods. So you can't blame him there, but I would say that, agreed, not maybe time to panic just yet on the Yaroslav. The consistency is going to be the real thing, is that, can he have those moments where he's kept us in the game? There were some moments where we've seen some sort of collapse, and I don't know, to Joe's point, if that's more or less a team structural collapse. But we all know the way that over the years, at least, it seems that the team does play differently when there's a backup goaltender in net. So what would be, John, if you had a highlight from the weekend here, the Dallas Coyotes game here?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the weekend on the whole, I would just say the way that they basically took over the third period in the Dallas game. I mean, the Coyotes game, they came from behind and won that game too. But, you're on the road against Dallas. You got to end this losing streak. Stars were leading their division. I don't know if they still are, but they were in first place. And, you're in a back and forth game. The Rangers have shot themselves in the foot a couple of times in this game, but to respond and be at your best when it counts, in the third period and outscore a good team like the Stars on the road 3-0 in the third, and to get some secondary scoring in the middle of that too. Zach Jones gets the game-winning goal. Julien Gauthier had an assist, and his first goal of the season, highlight reel goal, kind of a crazy play there. Finally seeing him finish his opportunity, so that was great too. But yeah, just great to see the Rangers once again bear down when they really needed to, and see some unlikely heroes step up in that game. So for me, if I'm going to pick one highlight of the entire weekend, I got to go with the third period against the Stars there. Once again, the Rangers just really delivering in crunch time there.
Also, some of these Igor goals that he has let in, I feel like a little bit defensively, we've been giving the puck away kind of like in front of the net, like, which is like, we're asking a lot of Igor to like step up and make these saves when you're giving it away right there for him. Going forward, is Zach Jones going to be the guy, or are we going to see more of Hayek, or is it going to be kind of like a split time thing, John? What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Gallant will kind of let the two of them settle that. Right now, I think as things currently stand, you'll probably see Zach Jones. I would say he'll get about 2/3 of the games. Maybe Hayek will get about a third of the games. Obviously, that can fluctuate depending, once again, on how each of them play. But, my big thing there is that I think Zach Jones at this point has a little bit more upside than Libor Hayek. And, Hayek has had some chances. That obviously that trade between the Rangers and Lightning hasn't really worked out that well for the Rangers. And Hayek's played around, I think, about 100 NHL games in his career now. And Zach Jones is at about, less than 30, I believe. So Hayek's had his opportunities and for the most part hasn't really taken advantage of them. I will say, I think he's played a little bit better this season than we've seen in the past. But for me, yeah, I think Zach Jones is the guy. I think he's got the inside track there. And I think they will give him every opportunity to eventually run away with that job. I mean, hopefully by the time we're getting near the playoffs, he's the guy and he's firmly entrenched in the lineup, and he's out there with Schneider pretty much every night. But how about you guys? I mean, what's your opinion on that whole situation as well? Because obviously it's kind of going back and forth between the two of them so far this season.
Well, I've seen I've liked Zach Jones' offensive play. I like he's in the offensive zone making passes, but he hasn't shown as a true defenseman that he can play with the big boys every night. So I like what you're saying. I think he's on the fast track to be the guy going forward, but I don't think you give him the range just yet. You let, if we have a tougher team going down that has more depth in their lines, I think you go with Hayek almost to play a more defensive stance like that. So I think I'm with you, John. I think he's going to be the guy. I just don't think you give him the full go ahead right now. What about you, Steve?
As far as it's got to be a vote of confidence to come into that game and score like he did, especially like Gauthier too. That's what we want to see. We want to see some competition for these last positions. If everybody's job feels safe, then everyone's going to get complacent kind of thing. You want that competition. You saw Reeves get sat and Gauthier comes into the game and he has a goal and an assist. And how about 20 seconds after having that assist, which was a fantastic play from Gauthier to set up the goal from Jones, and then you rebound into that and you have that crazy burst of speed. We've always seen it. Joe Micheletti probably talked about it 3 or 4 times during the game, that we've always seen all those tools, but the finishing ability, like you had alluded to, John, of course he finishes without a goalie in the net. But there's something
that counts.
That always helps.
It counts.
It's the confidence that you want to see that. It definitely counts. Counts just the same on paper. But as far as some competition, I think that this is all good, well and good to see a little bit of that, specifically in that last pairing defense. And there's going to be some depth flopping, I feel like, going forward into those last third and fourth line roles.
Yeah, I'm with you. And one of the things that I talked about with Gauthier, a couple episodes ago on my show, I think it was after his big game against the Stars. It's crazy to think how easily he could not be a Ranger right now, because if you guys remember back to the expansion draft, they were only going to be able to protect one out of Kevin Rooney, Julien Gauthier, and Colin Blackwell. And I was kind of hoping it would be Gauthier because I just felt like of those 3 players, he had the most upside, but they chose to protect Rooney. So Gautier's out there. The Kraken take Blackwell instead. So he dodged that bullet. And then this year, he's placed on waivers along with Jared Tenorti, and somehow Gauthier clears waivers and Tenorti doesn't. Anybody could have just grabbed Julien Gauthier there. So it would be freaking wild if Julien Gauthier finally puts it all together and becomes a really productive player for this team, because, I mean, he was this close a couple of times to potentially not even being here anymore.
You see Dryden Hunt gets taken immediately in waivers too. So I mean, to your point, a not impossible factor. And then, the reason why he came to the Rangers to begin with is because he was given another chance. We had a glut at the defensive position and just made a hockey trade for another guy that could use another crack. So it would fit into the Rangers persona all too well if he did go on to another team and like burn us for like, 5 or 6 goals. But yeah,
And shout out to
Gauthier.
Patrick Nemeth for not scoring last night against us. I
Yeah.
thought that was like a gimme game. Like, you know what, guys, who I'm excited to see? Like, I've been loving the play out of Kakko, but I'm like, all the Kakko haters are like, oh, he makes all these great moves to the net, but he doesn't finish. Talk to me like mid-January. He's going to be finishing those goals. Like, there's no way he's not getting this many opportunities. One of them's going to go in. Like, they're just going to start falling each night.
Yeah, he it almost feels like, with the years going by here and he's into year 4 with the Rangers, it almost feels like, the light bulb has kind of gone off a little bit for him in a sense that he realizes he can use his size and his strength to his advantage. We didn't really see him do that his first couple of seasons in the league. He's able to do that a little bit better now. And you guys see how good he is on the puck. I mean, if Kakko doesn't want to give up the puck, guys, that's a problem for the other team. They can't take it away from him. And I almost get the sense that, he comes in, 18-year-old rookie, number 2 pick, and probably didn't want to be perceived as like a puck hog by his teammates. And that was a team-wide thing. Everybody was selfless to a fault for a couple of years there. But I think Kakko and a lot of players on this Ranger team, they're realizing like, hey, if I shoot the puck, nobody's going to be mad at me. Like, it's okay. If I hang onto the puck for an extra second and, maintain possession, nobody's going to be mad at me. So it's good to see Kakko kind of evolve his game. And like I said, take advantage of the skill set that he has.
I agree, John. I think he's going to start shooting more. Like, he has the opportunity. I'm screaming at the team, shoot, shoot. I think he's just going to start shooting. That's all I can.
Yeah, I don't ever want to be that guy that's just always screaming, shoot, shoot, shoot. But for a couple of years there with the Rangers, I mean, that was all of us. There were just too many times where everybody would go for that extra pass. Everybody wants to set up their buddy for an easy goal. But sooner or later, just fire it at the net, especially if you have a good shot.
Great.
Yeah, now it's hard to critique guys like Fox and Mika leading the way, on our team in points. But, you watch against the Stars there, Fox comes in, could just shoot, realizes the goalie has the net pretty much hogged up, fakes the pass to Mika, doesn't do anything, goes around the net. It's like, at a point, a pass on pads, at least get it towards the net and something maybe fun will happen with it. I understand that a lot of the times we're looking for that cross-ice feed, but you've started to see the teams kind of figure that out, maybe specifically I'm talking about on the power play. Panarin, we're so used to making that cross slot pass. So the more we can mix it up and the more we can have that little Mika tipping goal, like keeping teams on their toes and having us have options, is going to make this team even scarier.
Yeah, no, that was a beautiful goal. And it's nice to see the power play, get rolling again. And, to your point, I think there were times where the Rangers were going to the well just a little bit too often. That Panarin to Mika one-timer attempt. And on one hand, I mean, yeah, go for it, because Panarin's an unbelievable passer and Mika can really let it rip. But you could tell, I mean, teams are really looking to take that away and kind of almost daring the Rangers to beat them in other ways on the power play. The good news for us as Ranger fans is that the Rangers can beat you other ways on the power play. One of the best net front presences in hockey in Chris Kreider. Adam Fox, one of the best, power play quarterbacks in the league for sure. And Trocheck's fit like a glove too. And as you saw last night, you just mentioned the goal that they scored. You had Panarin passing in deep to Kreider, and you're thinking, Kreider's going to go for that tipping goal. And instead, he redirects it over to Mika, and Mika gets the tap-in goal rather than the Panarin to Mika one-timer. The puck went from Panarin to Mika. It just went there in a different manner than we're used to seeing. So glad to see that work out. And the power play has been swarming these last 2 games, and that's a big part of this team, and hopefully it bodes well for the month of November coming up here.
Yeah, and I think it's sustainable, especially like what you say, like leading up to this month. There's a lot of beatable teams, a lot of really winnable games, and to see it start to click now. I mean, it was clicking early. There was probably maybe just during that losing skid where it wasn't, but it's one of those things that I think it operated at 25% last year. It is sustainable for this to get clicking and get going in a really momentous fashion for us. So I think this is the time for it to start to click for us. And especially there's games against the Wings, there's games against the Ducks, there's games against the Devils. There's games against really beatable teams that are coming up. And this would be kind of like last year, one of those opportunities to kind of go on like a big run to start the season and really cement that lock on the division. But if you told me that the Golden Knights, the Boston Bruins, the Jersey Devils would all be at the top of their divisions, I would call you crazy, but here we are, and that's why we love watching NHL hockey, but at least myself.
We got the Flyers on Tuesday, and then we got the Bruins on Thursday. Are we seeing Igor both of those games, or you think we're going to try the Halak thing again?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I have the schedule right here, and I'm going to pull it up real quick. And I think maybe you wait until the Sunday game against the Red Wings for Halak. Maybe they got a home game the following Tuesday against the Islanders. It goes Flyers, Bruins, Red Wings, Islanders. Part of me thinks you might get Halak against the Islanders. We saw him play against the Islanders earlier this season. Yaroslav Halak revenge game, maybe. We'll see. But I'm kind of hoping that they kind of ride with Igor Shesterkin for these games against the Flyers and the Bruins here. Like you said, a couple of first place teams, and the Rangers are going to put their best foot forward. I would imagine both those teams will go with their top goalie in those games. So we'll see. I know that you have to be careful and you want to keep Igor fresh, but there will be opportunities to get him some rest later in the season. We've already seen Halak 3 times this year, so I'm good with a couple of Igor games for Tuesday and Thursday here for sure.
Getting Igor to play those back-to-back really cements the idea that there's some layers of confidence here. It's not just you're our number one, right? You are trusted to go out there and win when we ask you to. And I think that Gallant has almost deceived the fans when we had that last-minute Halak start. And then the same thing again with the back-to-back Igor start. I think that he truly looks for the pulse on the team and to see who's going to give him the best crack that night to win the game. So I think that moving forward, I wouldn't be surprised to just continue with Igor, barring, like you had mentioned, Boston, maybe Halak's old team or something like that comes up where you give the guy the start, maybe one out of those 4 coming up. But Igor, I mean, his numbers right now, 9-13 across the first games. He's 5-0-2 with a 2.55 goals against. Some of the team leaders, we have Panarin as 16 points over 10 games played, and Zibanejad with 12. So the Stars are doing what is being asked of them at least at this time. It looks like Fox is at an almost point per game pace as well as Trocheck. So if there was a glaring weakness to this team right now, it's that consistency for sure. And the top line scoring and keeping this chemistry, I think, is going to be key. If we can lock up those top positions and not move on from that Kakko laugh idea just quite yet. Somebody had mentioned online, these games don't matter. We're 10 games into the season. Like, the season's an eighth of the way over with. Soon it's going to be a quarter. It's like,
and we're in the Metropolitan. Every team can play and every team can win.
To your point, Joe, we have 5 wins into the season and we're tied for first place in the Metro. So think about it like that. We haven't even done the best start that we can, and this division is clearly competitive. If you look around the league, there's a lot of juxtaposition in the standings. I kind of keep thinking about the Athletic article that said that we were the 14th team in the league, that no team has a bigger boom bust, but it's like, it's kind of looking that way, man. I mean, we've shown that we can hang out with the Cup champs and go to overtime with them, but we also showed that we can almost maybe lose the game to the Coyotes here and there. So
yeah, I think they're going to be all right. The thing that's, bothering me so far this season, and I'll preface this whole thing by saying that I think it's very correctable. It just feels like there's too many times. You look at every goal that the Rangers allowed over this weekend, almost all of them are a case of the Rangers just shooting themselves in the foot. A defensive lapse, getting outworked along the boards, and then, the opponent keeps the offensive possession going because of it, a turnover, a penalty, whatever it might be. It just seems like on every goal that they're allowing, something just goes wrong and somebody makes a mistake. We had Ryan Lindgren giving the puck away, which is not like him at all. That happened in the Coyotes game, and it happened against the Stars too. And we got lucky because that one got disallowed to the offside. And then, there's a goal against the Stars where, the draw was in the Rangers zone and the puck's just kind of laying there. And, Goodrow and Vesey are there, 2 good defensive forwards, and they just, couldn't make a play on the puck, and the Stars score off of that. A lot of examples like that. And then even, the Coyotes score on the power play last night, and give them props. It was a good goal, but that was all set up because Panarin took a not so good offensive zone penalty. So it just feels like everything that they're giving up as far as goals are concerned is self-inflicted. And like I said, the good news is I think it's all correctable. And, a lot of defensemen on this team, I would say Lindgren, Miller, and Trouba, they've all been fine. They've all had good moments this year. I think all of them have yet to really put their best foot forward. I don't know that they've all played at the level that we saw them play at last year, but there's no reason to think that they won't eventually get there. And I think it's coming sooner rather than later.
But John, to your point, I totally agree. They've been self-inflicted, and when it rains, it pours. We've playing backup goaltenders that are playing lights out, like Igor Vezina season kind of quality, and like you were saying, Lindgren in the Blue Jackets game took that bad boarding call up against the boards. Boom, they go on the power play, goal. Panarin takes that bad penalty yesterday. Boom, goal. So, yeah, I think that's going to work itself out. Also, the power play, we saw what happens when it wasn't clicking. It was there pretty much 3 games there where nothing was, we were getting shots, but they weren't falling. So, once that corrects itself, the power play is back to normal. We're taking less of those bad penalties. I think everything's going to be fine. I don't argue with Gallant. Like, it makes sense. The back-to-back game, he played Halak for the Blue Jack or against the Winnipeg. Then he played against the Blue Jackets, losing record. You would think you would want to play your backup goaltender, get him used to it. And then you play him again against the Islanders, just because it's back-to-back. You just played the Cup champs, and he falls short. So I'm with you. I think this week, Igor, and then you play him over the weekend, and you get you play Halak over the weekend, you get Igor back next week.
To your point, man, getting outworked. It's like last year we were outworking teams and we weren't winning faceoffs. Now we're winning faceoffs and we're getting outworked. It's like what's funny is I think it is correctable, like you said, but I think we have the good cast of people to do it. I think it's essentially the same team plus Trocheck. So, you're still going to get the work ethic there, but it's just funny that when you always feel like you're looking towards that one thing, we finally have that thing in the faceoffs. To your point, we win a faceoff and then give up a goal. So it's like people talk about that first pass to get out of the zone. That's where I think we've been really kind of, call it sloppy, call it lazy. Correctable is definitely the word though, like you said, and uncharacteristic. That's the other thing, is that it's not like us. It's not like that team that went so far, is that we were a little bit more patient, a little bit more careful with that first pass. And I'd be interested to see combine that work ethic that we're so used to with the possession and the face-off and wins. Then this team is really scary. And like I said, we're well situated, even regardless of a kind of a sloppy start. Igor is at least still shining with his record, and I think that even some of the games where he didn't look so strong, I think that, like we had chatted about earlier, that it's mostly a team kind of collapse and sloppy play in front of the net. A lot of the times. I'm sorry.
Did you hear Valqueta after the post game?
Please go ahead.
John Giannone was like, "So how have you felt about like Igor's performance? Like he's 5-0-2. Do you feel like he's lived up to your expectations?" And we are so spoiled as a fan base. Even Valqueta was like, "Well, I like he's doing good, but I felt like he was going to give us a little bit more." So
5-0-2.
Exactly.
Yeah.
No regular overtime loss.
That's the thing. I mean, he set the bar so high for himself. And I think sometimes, these guys, they almost become victim of their own success as far as, how the fans perceive them. And we saw a lot of fans getting on Artemi Panarin in the playoff run last year. And granted, he was not at his best. But, part of the reason for that is because we just expect excellence from him night in and night out. Adam Fox, same thing. People have even gotten on him from time to time. And the thing I say about Panarin all the time is that, that was him at his absolute worst. And he still had 16 points in 20 playoff games last year and a Game 7 overtime winner against the despised Pittsburgh Penguins. So that's Panarin's floor, basically. And, I think for the most part, the fans, still like this team. But yeah, I mean, expectations are high. That's what'll happen when you go to the Eastern Conference Finals and you've got all these young emerging stars and a fan base that's hungry for its first Stanley Cup in almost 30 years.
I saw it. I was thinking about it, like former Rangers scoring, and I was like, could you imagine if Chris Kreider was on another team? He would come back and score 3 goals every time he played us, if that happened. For all the people that say he's overpaid.
How about Artemi continuing up his murdering of the Blue Jackets? Our only point, obviously, in the game, but it's just like one of those things. It's just death taxes and scoring on ex-Rangers scoring on us, but Panarin too, like you had said, that's his floor. In 16 points across 10 games, and like you said, we're spoiled as a fan base that even he's looked. Don't get me wrong, he's looked fantastic, but there's even been some plays where it's uncharacteristic, and I think that's what you get for taking chances. I think that's what you get for playing his style. It's very high octane, and a lot of things can happen really quickly, and maybe you give up an opportunity because of it, but at least there's a guy like Trocheck that can cash in. At least the team chemistry is there. You even saw Kakko for a brief moment on the power play, getting some number 1 power play time. So having these guys kind of elevate to that role and then being able to share that confidence, because you can't guard everybody. And you had kind of alluded to teams are are daring the Rangers to beat them another way. And I think that we're going to find those ways, because we're going to have to step outside the box. We're going to have to be, the team is going to have to be as creative as Panarin. And I think that that kind of mindset and having those two top lines represent a dangerous threat both times that you face when you're going to be in a position where you're going to have to do you're going to have to do something to deal with both lines, in other words. So I think that we're in a great position. And I think that this is just one of those like rocky kind of starts. And again, it's not even that rocky of a start. It's just kind of us having those high expectations, like you said, but can't wait to see what happens over the stretch of games, because this is going to be really like season defining right here, I feel like.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it doesn't get any easier, especially at the start of the month here. I mean, we talked about how, playing a couple of first place teams and the Flyers and the Bruins, and, playing some teams that look to be improved a little bit. The Red Wings look a little bit better than they've been in recent seasons. I mean, later in the month, you've got the Kings, who were a playoff team last year to the surprise of many. There's a game against the Oilers, the Devils. I mean, we'll find out if they're for real or not, but they're off to a heck of a start themselves. So, yeah, gut check time in November here for the Rangers for sure.
All righty, John. I think that's all we have for today. Thank you
Yeah.
so much for joining us. Let's get these wins this week, boys. Let's go Rangers.
Absolutely. And thank
John,
you
thanks
guys
again,
so
brother.
much for having me. And you guys will have to join me on an episode of Locked On Rangers sometime in the future for sure.
We'll do. Everybody go ahead and check out Locked On Rangers with John Check. Thank you again, John, for sharing the time with us, brother. Let's go Rangers.
Let's go Rangers.